What's up, YouTube? It's Joe Catchpolia sitting on the couch making some money investing in fractional real estate online, as usual. Today I'm going to cover the Piggy Bank. It's the newest offering from Mogul. It's 8 bedrooms, 2 baths, 1,800 square foot pad split in Mesa, Arizona. If you've been following along, the Road was also a pad split in Mesa, Arizona. I own a little piece of that one and it's been doing very well. So I was looking forward to this one coming out. There's quite a bit of info I'm going to share on it today. I don't have the analysis tab yet for it, so I don't know that this is going to be a complete video. But I had plenty of stuff to talk about, so maybe breaking this into two might make sense. I wanted to mention I really appreciate all of the help and info sharing and everything that's been going on in our Discord lately. That's what first brought this to my attention. I did get an email about them doing their VIP launch, but even before that, somebody had posted in our Discord this message where they had invested in the ClearPad and in the Taylor, and um, that those deals fell through. Those were ones that I hadn't invested in, so I didn't get this email, but they fell through. There was some discrepancy over who was, there was these solar panel loans that had liens on the property. The seller didn't want to remove them, and so they ended up not being able to come to a deal on that, and that deal fell through. I actually think this is a really good sign, right? Because Mogul is in a situation very similar to what you have as like syndicators are in, where they get a fee if they close, right? So it's in their best interest to close a deal if at all possible. But it's not necessarily in us as investors' best interests for a deal to close if the numbers stop being what we expected them to be, right? Like if the deal gets significantly worse, we shouldn't want it to move forward, right? And so I was really glad to see that, um, these were two properties. I think they were both completely sold out. And they said, oh, well, we have this issue. The seller's not going to fix it for us. I'm sure the seller thought, oh, they're stuck, right? They've already raised the money for this. So I was really glad to see this. I think that's a good sign when you have, a group that's incentivized to close deals, not close deals that I'm sure they could have, right? They could have pushed this through, figured out a way to do it. It probably would have just nerfed the returns a little bit. But so I was really glad to see that. So that I think that's a good sign. And then they told this co-owner, or no, I'm stuck in lofty speak, right? It's not co-owner, but they told this other investor, hey, we're sending you the piggy bank deal early, and it does seem like they got this email before I got the VIP launch email, so it does seem like they sent it early, so that if you want to, if you want to reallocate your dollars, you want to invest in this Mesa, Arizona pad split, we want to make sure that you have access to it. So I think it's, one, I was really glad to see that they did back out of a deal that because it's the first ones I've seen them back out of. Um, and then two, that they're trying to say, oh, they realize that they've inconvenienced this person and are trying to create a better situation for them. So I thought that was great. Um, this is the deal. It is very similar to a lot of the pad splits they're putting out. Um, it's in Mesa, Arizona. Like I said, this is a market where this is the sub market, right? The city of Mesa, Arizona, is already 500,000 people. This is a part of the greater Phoenix market. There's just been tremendous growth here. One of the things I wanted to point out, a member of our Discord had posted this article about 4,000 new housing units coming. And this is the kind of stuff, like if I'm really picking a new market and investing in that market, I want to see all of this kind of data, right? I'm always looking for new stuff happening in the area, new developments. I mean, I think it's super useful. Um, I don't think this is terribly concerning though, right? Like 4,000 new units, this is close to where we are. But if you look at how fast the population is growing, right? Just in the last 4 years, you've had 13,000 new people. I'm sure that there are thousands of units being built, just like in my market. I'm sure there's a lot of that. I actually think it might end up being good for the pad split because, construction workers, people that are involved in some activities in that being built could be potential members in the pad split. But it's also, brand new construction, either whether it's apartments or single family homes or condos, are not going to really be competing in the type of the part of the market that we're in. Now, obviously, more supply should, on average, drive down the rental rates, but it is, I don't know. I thought it was a really interesting article. I'm glad that it was shared, but it wasn't like such a if we had this same type of article in a market where you had a 50,000 population and they were going to put 4,000 new housing units, just in one site, I would be terrified, right? But where this is, it's already a good sized market. It's a fast growing market. Um, it doesn't concern me, but it is an interesting data point, right? And I think it's nice because they're also adding commercial there, and so it is, um, it's just a good sign that there's this growth happening. I did look up the median home price trends. This has moved, it's had we've seen this quite a bit, right? And this sort of shape that we've seen has been in a lot of the markets that I've looked at that are the fast growing markets, but also, or that are typically fast growing, which you'd think that they would have recovered better, but also markets where there's been a bunch of new construction. I would venture to, I would bet that that's the case here. I don't know that for sure, but this strikes me as a market very similar to the others. And so, the only places where we've seen really come back quicker have been the really supply constrained markets. I think this is probably a sign that there is a lot of new construction that's still being sold, um, dragging down the median price. Maybe they built a lot of smaller stuff. That's what's happening here in San Antonio. We have a lot of smaller new construction being sold than in the past, and that's sort of moving our median price down. Even though, if you take one home comparing it to another, that same home 5 years ago, you're not seeing the same sort of price trend. But anyway, not terribly concerning. It's one we've seen over and over again. I don't expect this trend to last, right? I mean, all of these we're seeing this little downturn here. Um, but I still believe in the long run, I'd much rather be in a market that's a fast growing market like this one. So it's I'm pretty bullish on the area. Like I said, I already own a piece of the roads. Let me go into that now, and then I'll show you this on the map. So this is I don't this was only the second one I bought. I just bought a little bit of it. Uh, very much still experimenting on all of these, right? I haven't bought a ton of money's worth of any of them. But this is 10 bedrooms, 3 baths, 200, 2,600 square feet. So a decent size bigger. Um, Not a whole lot more money, right? Like if you compare this price, this is 605,000 versus 550,000. But we're getting two extra bedrooms here. Um, I don't know, but I don't know, they aren't, it's not as if they were really close to each other, where are we? If they were much closer to each other, that might concern me. But I think that, there's the potential that these are just somewhat different markets. And so you're going to have different price points, right? And different rental rates as well. Um, but yeah, this is one of the this has been an amazing performer for me. If you can see, for the first, it got rents in February for the first time, and every month it's just been really solid. This is well above where they had predicted, I believe. I want to say this was 10 or 11 was the prediction, and then we got to 12, but I'm not 100% certain on that. But I was very happy with this one. Did they say in their initial one? I'd have to go back and look, or maybe can I look in the analysis tab, and see what they predicted. I wonder if we can. We're going to try that. Probably going to break my screen recorder because it's been really finicky again lately. We've got the average yield, but what did they predict for their year one yield? Yeah, yeah. Their year one levered cash on cash, they had 9.42. So we're crushing that, right? And so that's one of the things that I like about what they're doing. I think they are being conservative on the income side, at least from all the places that I'm checking them, right? And so it's something that I like to see. Let's see. This was, yeah, we already went over that. Um, this is a property. It looks like it was on the market, right? And it was only on the market for a few days. 6 days. They got it under contract really quickly. They're accepting backups. I think they're probably just paying market price for this. This isn't an off-market deal. It's not. They're not getting some discount, but from a yield, but they're looking at it from a yield perspective, and I think that's what a lot of their deals are. Although a lot of them are off-market, but I think they're more trying to really make sure the yield and business plan makes sense, And the ones that I've complained about, it's been from a valuation perspective in general, or sometimes just some like little nitpicky physical aspects of the property, which we're going to get into today on this one. Um, Looks like this property sold in just 2 years ago for 528, so we're paying a little bit more than that. I wish I left that tab up that had the price trend, but it does look like we're trending a tiny bit higher than 2023 around that time. So I think the pricing makes sense, and I also don't know what the property looked like at that point in time versus now. But I know in general, we're paying a little bit of a premium sometimes for the in-place income. It's giving us some safety and it's giving us income from day one. So I'm not too worried about this price point, right? Because it is very close to that last sale, and it was listed and they got it under contract right away. Um, it does. I guess you could potentially list it overpriced, but in general, it seems to make some sense, at least from my perspective, from the stuff that I've looked at. Again, once they do give us some comps here and the prices, and using their comps, it makes perfect sense. It's something, if I might spend more time on this once the analysis tab is up, and if I decide it's something I'm going to move forward with, maybe I'll spend a little bit more time. Um, in general, though, I think it's one that I'm not going to, and I'm going to get into why in just a minute. Let me see, though. I want to share. Um, did they have? I really hate that when once all the third-party sites like stop giving you their estimated values. When it's listed for sale, and I guess I understand why they do that, but I think, yeah, I mean, okay, we're getting a range of recently sold, but anyway, maybe it was there and I missed it. So this is just showing how close it is to the road, so you can see same market, not too far away. So this is one of the things, if you remember, pad splits in general, I'm always very concerned about the parking, right? I like corner lots. I like, because you have like a more street parking. Here, I think it's not terrible, but it's not, you know, it looks like you could put 6 cars here, but you'd have tandem parking, and then that's problematic, right? Because if you park behind the other people that are staying there, that doesn't work. But I think you can at least have three in the driveway. You can have a couple parked here, but you'll notice this is November of 2024, and I don't know when this was, but it doesn't look like there was a huge problem with parking. But the reason when that I tend to be concerned about this is you don't want to have problems with the neighbors if you just have, even though there is street parking, neighbors will complain if you've got 8 cars in the street, right? So it's not the best setup for parking, but it's not terrible. It is good. Like you can see this, they could move these rocks and have some more room to have parking here if they wanted to do that. I have seen pad splits in other markets just use gravel parking like that, or just the little rocks that they drive on. So I think it's not a huge issue, but it's not the best parking setup that we've seen, but it's not something I'm too terribly worried about. So this is really interesting to me, right? Is there's a pool. So whenever I've talked to the pad split company, they've really looked at as a pool as a negative, at least in my market, right here in San Antonio. And usually here, people really want a pool, right? Which I'm assuming Mesa, Arizona is pretty similar, right? People want a pool. But because one of the things that the pad split people are trying to do is not have these common areas, right? Like the one of the main ways that you avoid interpersonal problems between guests that are staying there or between your members that are staying in the individual rooms is by not having all these common areas for them to hang out and not making it, not having the temptation to have a party or anything like that. When you have a nice backyard with a pool like this one, um, it kind of goes against that idea that they have. So I thought this was really strange. uh, I haven't seen pad splits with pools in the past, right? And I wonder, like, maybe was this bought as a short-term rental at one time and then they converted it to pad split? I have seen some of that because they're both big homes. Um, so okay, we got the parking. It's not perfect, but I think it's not too bad. We've got the pool that to me seems like it's a negative. It seems like it's opposed to what they are. What at least I've been told by pad split and employees, that it's something that they don't want. So I thought it's interesting that we have one. And then the only other thing about the physical characteristics of this, Normally, 2,000 square feet for 8 bedrooms is sort of like the minimum a lot of people look for. And it's not like I have endless experience with pad splits, right? I've got a couple of clients that have done this. I'm invested in a few now, but it is, most of this is just from either more experienced clients that I've talked to or from talking to pad split themselves. So this seems like a little bit on the small side for 8 bedrooms, but then also too, you're completely maxing out the bedroom to bathroom ratio. So pad split normally wants you to have at least one bathroom for every 4 bedrooms. Um, this is 8 bedrooms and 2 bathrooms, and so you're completely maxed out there, right? And I know a lot of the people that buy these, they want to do a little bit better. Like, okay, that's the worst case scenario, but a lot of people like the 10-3 that we just saw, which was the roads. I like that ratio a little bit better, right? I mean, one of the things that you want to do is try to avoid situations where we have the members. I always want to say guests or tenants, but in this model, they're actually called members. You don't want to create any situations where they're going to be fighting over something, and so the 4-to-1 ratio, even though it's acceptable for pad split, it's on the upper bound there. Um, and then the only other thing in this listing that was a little weird is the way they worded this. It's operating pad split in the Phoenix market over a year of verified operating actuals, yielding an NOI yield of over 9% annualized. Like, why are we annualizing it if it's over actuals? I think probably what happened is we have over a year of actuals. Um, but there was a ramp up period, right? And so now they're annualizing the more recent period. That's what I think they're saying they're doing. I'm not completely sure. This was just worded kind of funny, so I'm not positive. Um, they have just tended to outperform like I'm starting to really trust Mogul to be conservative with their income numbers, right? Of course, I still want to check them, and so again, once the analysis tab is up, I'll be able to do a little bit more checking. But they've got their rental income of 81,000. Uh, I looked up on pad split in this market, and it does look like right around $200 a week is pretty normal. This is something, there's not a Air DNA type thing yet for pad split that I'm aware of. So the only thing I've really been able to figure out to do is just go into the same market, look around. It doesn't look like there's one. I think I was trying to figure out if this is actually, oh, maybe, let's see. Maybe that is this one. Oh, that's interesting. It hasn't tried to make me sign in before when I've done that. Or maybe I just got logged out and I usually am signed in. I'm not sure. So let's look at the pictures. Is it this one? Is that the same one? Oh, it is the same one. Okay. So it looks like maybe they do have an availability, $201. And so like, okay, this was I did the 1600, which is 8 bedrooms times 200 times 52, 83,200. And then when I looked, um, over here, 81,000 projected yearly rental revenue. So it looks like they're slightly below that. And then although this doesn't take into account any vacancy, right? Because I was calculating gross, but also too, this is 201 plus, so maybe some of the units are a little bit more. It is something, again, maybe I'd want to dig into a little bit more, um, if it's one that I thought I'm going to buy. And so, like, I mean, you can tell, I think I'm probably going to pass this one up. I don't like that it has a pool, just because I know that's sort of not a best practice. I'm really interested to hear what they have to say about that, though. Um, I don't really like, I don't like when you max out the 4-to-1 bedroom to bathroom ratio. I just really think, um, you know, that always has bothered me just a little bit. Like, I've wanted to have a little bit more bathrooms to bedrooms. Maybe that's just because I'm a weirdo who spends a lot of time in the bathroom. I don't know. But, that's been one. And then just, I just feel like I don't have to buy every single one that comes up because they just keep putting out good deals, right? And so, that's been part of it. And then the other thing too, I'm not going to make the decision until I see the analysis tab. Maybe dig into some of these questions a little bit more. Oh, but I wanted to mention a couple other things. The crime map, this didn't look too bad at all, but it is only 3 days of crime. But they didn't have any, it was pretty spread out. Like this is the closest one, not too terribly close. So that seems, this looks a lot better than a lot of them that we've seen. But it is always weird to me how like I don't understand how spot crime decides when to spread it out more and when to go further back in time. Um, but in any case, I mean, it produced a map that made me feel pretty comfortable, even though it's obviously not the greatest area. I mean, you do have quite a few crimes, but it isn't, it's not all right here. The flood map is the weirdest. I have never run into this before. Now we have two of these in a row where we have something different going on with the flood map. And this made me want to talk a little bit more about this. One of the things that I've always just invested in my own market, right? I haven't ever been an investor that invests remotely. I've moved a few times and invested in different markets, but I've always moved or spent significant time in a market before buying property there. And one of the things that I think one of the challenges of fractional real estate is it's so easy to just go into all these different markets, and then you end up running into things that you've just never seen before. I've never seen a not printed map when I've gone to the FEMA flood map. I have no idea what this means. I don't know if this is a glitch right now. I don't know if like the data just isn't provided on this website at the moment. It doesn't look like there's just no, like I can't imagine that you have this body of water over here and that it doesn't flood sometimes, right? So I really just don't understand what's happening with this. Um, Nothing about it makes me think that this is a flood zone, but it's just really weird that it is. I've just never seen not printed. So if anybody's run into this, or if you're in a market where this is more common, I'd love to hear about that. But it is something that when for me, because I am a conservative investor, whenever there are like a lot of questions, or even just a couple questions that maybe are major that I don't know the answer to, it's easier to just not buy that one, move on to the next one, right? I mean, there's especially I think on Mogul, they're putting out so this is it's kind of funny to like hold this against them, but they're putting out so many deals that I just think are good deals that I can be picky, right? I don't have to buy every single one of theirs. I think I already have 16 properties with them. Haven't even been investing a year. Um, if I got buy two out of every three, which is kind of what I'm on track to do, uh, I don't think there's anything wrong with that. There's no reason that I have to like every single one that they put out. And so if there's any reason at all that I'm uncomfortable with it, I'll just pass on it. Um, one of the things that I've kind of wondered about, they've talked about having their secondary market eventually. And so over time, it'll be interesting to look back at these and be like, hey, were there good ones that I missed out on? Can I go and buy it later? Or can I like double down on the ones that I'm doing well with, which is one of the things that I'm hoping to be able to do. I mentioned I really have, the road has done really well for me. Hopefully, when that comes up next year, if there's anybody that wants to sell it, I get to be a buyer and get a little bit bigger piece because especially early on, I was only buying, 500 bucks, or some of them, I think some of them I only have 250 bucks in, because I am still just experimenting on all these platforms, which reminds me, please like and subscribe. In the description to this video, I have links to all of the sites where I'm currently investing in fractional real estate. Please do your own due diligence before using any of those links. Some of them are broken and aren't even going to give you money. Some of them will. But do your own due diligence into the platforms and into any properties that you decide to buy, right? Just because I decide not to buy this one doesn't mean that's the right answer for you. And the ones that I've bought that, again, maybe not the right ones for you as well. Also, I mentioned early on that I've been really happy with how much how helpful our community's been and how much we're sharing info, and I'd like to see that continue. We passed up 100 investor, yeah, 100 members or investors in our fractional real estate Discord. So please find that link. It's the first link in the description of this video. Feel free to join. There's a lot of helpful people in there. Um, there's some people that are a little bit less than helpful, but I think that in general we have a real a real good group of people. A little bit of messing around and fun is being had, but I think for the most part, It's a productive use of your time if you're interested in any of the platforms that we're on. Lofty, Ground Floor, Mogul, a little bit of collab, a couple people in arrived. A few of us in Saul's lot. But any of those, so, feel free to jump in there. Um, but yeah, so if anybody who's watching this, and you want to comment in here or jump in the Discord and talk to me about this, is this something you've run into before where the map is just not printed? What does that mean? Is my computer just glitching right now? Is this they just don't have a flood map printed because there's no flooding in this area? I mean, what is the story? I just don't know. It almost looks like it's all this color. Um, but like I'm just not used to it saying not printed, and it isn't the color that I'm used to seeing. And like usually I'll scroll until I can find somewhere where it's showing a difference, right? And like usually near a body of water, you'll see a little bit of a difference or somewhere. Um, and there's just nothing. So it makes me think there's something else going on, and I don't know what it is. Love to hear about that from you guys. Um, and then yeah, what do you think about the pool thing, right? Is that it seems problematic if you have eight unrelated people living in a home. Um, I mean, I know, I guess, in my condo complex, we have a pool here and it's not a problem, but if you have a disagreement with someone there, you get to go home and you don't then also share a kitchen with them, right? Unless it's your wife or something, and then that's your own fault, and you need to figure that out yourself, right? But I think in general, they usually only have like a shared eating space, and often, I mean, this one's not sort of following that model, but yeah, usually they'll have so they have one little setup there, but a lot of times they'll have like several small tables instead of just having one communal table. Um, I don't know. So, does the pool bother you as much as it bugs me? I think it only really gets to me because I've heard that from multiple pad split employees that, we don't really want you to have a pool. The size, again, strikes me as just a tiny bit small for 8 bedrooms. Usually, when the couple of experienced guys I'm working with are looking for at least 2,000 square feet to get to 8 bedrooms. And then again, the bathroom ratio. It just, it's not that I think this is necessarily a bad deal. I mean, it's operating as a pad split. They have income in place. Um, but it is, all these little things. Why buy it if I can just wait and get the next one that I think is even better? Now, at the same time, I'd like to add a little bit more in Arizona, right? So I am sort of on the fence, but I think those things are going to stop me from doing it. Once the analysis tab comes out, I'll dig into it a little bit more, see if I can get any more clarity around valuation. It does drive me crazy when it has been listed for sale in the third party sites take down their estimated prices. That doesn't happen in every market. It just depends on what the deal that those sites have with the MLS in different places. But it seems to be that's the case here because I didn't see them. Could have just missed them. I mean, I kind of prepared for this a little bit quickly because I wanted to talk about it right away. I think it sounds like this one's actually going to go live on their site on the 7th, I think, which is Monday. So you have some time. And then I do think because the two that sold out, those people are getting their money back. I think there's a good chance that this one sells out quickly. I mean, this is in pre-launch, and it's already 73,000 raised. Let's refresh that and see if that's changed. Nope. Okay. So no, but I mean, it's a much higher number than I usually see on the first day of their like VIP launch day, and so my guess is it's that a lot of the people that had their money in the ClearPad or in the Taylor decided, hey, let me put my money in here. Anyway, I think it's another solid deal that they're putting out, right? Like it looks. I am kind of getting nitpicky about certain things, and then we don't have all the info about some stuff as well. I think it's just way too clear that this is my favorite platform out of all the fractional real estate places to date. Saul's Lot's picking up some steam though. They have another DAC that should be paying off next week. So, they've got some competition, but at the moment, if I'm looking for a platform to make a long-term real estate investment on something that looks like the type of deal I'd want to buy in real life, Mogul is like the hands down winner at the moment. And so because of that, I want to be as critical as I can because I think that I talk, I say way too many nice things about them in general. So I want to be able to, you know, if I can give you some nitpicky things and reasons to not, to maybe not buy this one versus the next one. Um, yeah, but again, do your own due diligence, make your own decision. And everybody that's been doing it, I really appreciate you, being active in the Discord, helping people, sharing info. Please keep that up. I really, I love seeing the community grow. I think that the more that we can do that, I mean, it's such a, budding industry right now that we can just all make a ton of money here. And so I think the more that we work together on that, the better. Anyway, I think that is it for me for today. Until next time, I'm going to keep making mistakes so that you don't have to.